The league's changing,
But
and I think this year it's become apparent. I felt a major shift, at least in watching the game, from last playoffs into this regular season. There seems to be a real shift, just the way that the NHL kind of has watched the Florida Panthers. It seems like teams are
mhm,
trying to kind of realize that that is the current meta in the
yeah,
NHL is the Panthers, and they've shifted to playing like that, and this style of game that the Panthers play, where it's just a relentless forecheck and cycle and movement, and they create these odd man advantages for one another, and it's a very active system, and it requires a lot of buy-in from each player, and also to be very well coached, to be fast. You kind of have
hmm
a team of players who are all kind of very similar to one another, so that they kind of it's this very consistent way that they play hard, heavy, fast forecheck. And you look at a team like the Penguins, and yes, it could play that way, but you kind of like you need to build that system and those teams and those players,
hmm
and they're more of a fat net kind of team. Like you get a player like Letang, for example, and it's like, you know, he's a really good defenseman, but he's never been known for like that kind of like Florida Panthers style of game. And since the
no.
league has switched so much, these man on man style defensive systems are completely gone
Yeah,
in the
you
modern
don't see any
NHL
competitive
zone as
team
well.
with man on
Like,
man, except for I guess the Edmonton Oilers
mhm,
who were playing man on man last year went to the Cup final.
Well, man on
mhm.
man.
But like
And
that was
honestly,
just that was an anomaly. Now you see this year,
but the Panthers did both them. They did not fuck the Florida Panthers, and yes, the Oilers came back and almost won, and
but still
blah
it
blah
was
blah.
they
But
didn't win is important to it's
like the
important to see
first
that it
three
was a
games were the biggest beating a team has given a team in the Cup final that I've seen in a while,
oh
and I've
yeah.
seen some pretty, you know,
It wasn't just that
outmatched
Florida won
finals,
those
but
games,
that
it's
was
Edmonton had
just a
no
clinic.
chance in any of those games and couldn't defend anything. And it wasn't that Edmonton sorted it out
It wasn't
defensively.
luck either.
It was Edmonton's offensive horses picked it up for 3 games and just outscored their
Mhm.
defensive problems. And that's kind of what happened for a lot of that playoffs. Like how Vancouver got up early, they outscored their problems. Like Dallas,
Yeah, and
I could say goaltending was a huge part of that one where Skinner just stole a series. But yeah, you make a
I
good
said
point
this
this season
earlier in the
how
season, though. Yeah,
any team now with a man-on-man system or that is struggling heavily this year. The teams that are succeeding, like, and they're playing so well, like for example, the Jets that are
I
playing
have to
amazing,
bring
they
up the
play
Carolina
such a good
Hurricanes again
system.
too.
And the
When
Hurricanes,
like,
like,
I watched them play, and no team has stuck in my head more than the little bit I've seen in the Hurricanes when they're at their best. The way that they're able to
yeah,
play as a cohesive unit is very impressive. Yeah, like the NHL is always been a weak link sport. And I think over the past few years, the new golden era, as they call it, I kind of
mhm.
actually I shit on the NHL for a lot of their creative decisions and their marketing, but I really
Oh
like
yeah.
this marketing idea of this is the new golden age, because that's what it is, and that's
Oh,
how
it
it
is.
feels.
This
And
is
these
the
new stars and stuff,
most,
like, this is the most exciting the game has been in a long time, and
yeah.
these personalities and these guys and the skill on display is crazy.
Like you
But I
think about
feel like
usually you
it's
look at the when you talk to people who are have been watching hockey for a long time, usually when you're like in middle school age type stuff was when you have like that like you're just watching hockey and you're idolizing it.
yeah,
But like I now like I'm saying like right now that when I was in middle school age that was not the best era. Like this right now is the most exciting hockey
yeah.
I've ever seen and it just keeps getting more and more exciting.
I was visiting my family a while ago, and I was watching the Canadians. I forget who they were playing, if it was the Senators or something. But my mom was watching the game with me, and she just said, "Wow, hockey's so much better now."
Yeah.
And I'm like, right? But like even her, like, she doesn't watch sports, she doesn't care about any of that stuff, whatever. But she just looked at the TV and she's just seeing like the skill on display, and she's like, "Wow, this is insane!" Like, her memory of the sport is like the dead puck era, like 90s or whatever,
Yeah,
like when
exactly.
and where it was like tight checking and blah blah, but like nothing was happening. But now you see guys, they skate around the ice and they're doing these crazy moves and stick handling. It's so fast and there's so much skill, and it's like even as a impartial person who doesn't know anything about the game, you look at it, you go, well, wow, that's cool. Like you look at Cale Makar or like Lane Hudson, and you're like, wow, that guy's really good.
Yeah.
You didn't really have as much of that before when the players couldn't separate themselves. Now the point I was going to make is
I
that
think with that situation, I know with my
yeah,
couple of my family members don't watch. I think when it was still a thing, I'd sometimes just put on the Steve's hat picks for those who remember that.
for
Or
sure. Obviously,
and they would
great.
watch the
Yeah, that
things and
was
be like,
awesome.
holy smokes, that was like just a
Right?
ridiculous play. And like even if
And
they don't care,
it's
if
the
it's a player
forwards,
they
it's the
don't care about,
defensemen, it's the goalies, it's everything, the skill on display. But the point I was going to
yeah.
make is that all this skill has kind of, I guess, pushed the narrative a little too far one way of like now I think we really overestimate the amount of impact a star player or these
Yeah,
superstars
that's
have
a
on the
really
game
good point.
individually. And any team that's playing as a cohesive unit will always beat those teams. Like you have to not only have superstars, but those superstars have to play as a team, and every single
Hmm.
player on your team needs to all play the exact same way. The
Well, this is
best teams in
why
the NHL are they come in waves, right? And they just don't they're relentless and they don't open the game up as much as they take control of it and don't let go. Like the momentum shifts that I've seen in the NHL, watching regular season games, I've seen particularly strong compared to normal. And I think a lot of the reason why is the new defensive systems and structures and stuff.
yeah.
Teams that are trying to implement new stuff and things can get hemmed in their zone a bit more, it seems, with the way that the league is shifting and stuff, and to the advantage of the teams that are able to have relentless pressure and forecheck in the offensive zone.
Mm.
I've noticed that when I watch the games, like it's a lot less, maybe not a lot less, but it's noticeably less back and forth end to end hockey these days, and more teams get hemmed in their zones for minutes on end. And it's not just the
Hmm.
bad teams, like it's not just the style, the game has changed, and it's very interesting to see how um going forward, teams that are going to rebuild soon, like the Penguins, for example, adjust and what kind of players they draft and pick to kind of fit this new hockey.
Well, I could see a situation. You look at um, Buffalo right now, how they haven't been able to make the playoffs. I think about all these teams that are falling into
They've been a
rebuild
farm team
territory.
for
Like,
for cup champions forever.
well,
The
I think
Buffalo
now
Sabres are a farm team.
they've had a
Players
hard. I'm thinking in
they
the
play there and then they go somewhere else and win.
okay. My point is though, is all these teams that are going to have to rebuild really soon. Like they're going to really have to prove what they're worth because it's going to be so much harder. Like you're gonna have to be so much more precise and intelligent about how you build this team going forward. Because if you just go like, okay, easy, take this player because they're the best, take this player because they're the
Yeah,
best,
for sure.
you might end up with a team that has all these great players that isn't
Yeah, you don't
cohesive.
just draft a superstar first
Yeah,
overall and the rebuild's done and it's over and then he's going to
you
carry
have
you
to actually
forever.
be
You have to
so
do
strategic about
everything
which players you
correctly
draft.
and be lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
think
Well,
and
like you talk about as well in terms of watching, you've been so impressed with Carolina this year,
mhm,
and I've been just like I've been
Winnipeg as
amazed
well.
by watching the Jets. Like I watched them play and everyone is just like they're just so cohesive and they play with
They
such
know
speed
exactly
and
where on the ice the
they
other player is going to
exactly, but
be.
also at every step of the way they're hustling and it's also a situation where all four lines are all rolling at full speed and it's
Mhm,
like in any situation you could put any line out and trust them.
mhm,
Like even their top line where like
for sure.
if you go like 4 or 5 years ago and say, "Oh yeah, you could play a line with Mark Scheifele and trust them in any situation," you'd laugh me out of the room. Whereas
Of
now
course. Yeah.
everyone's bought into the system so well, and I think it comes with having like Rick Bowness just drilled defensive instincts into them. Now they have another coach who's building on it, and
The league's changed.
yeah,
Last
just
season, people
everyone's
have
bought in.
criticized
It's
the hiring
amazing.
of Rick Tocchet, saying, like he's not going to fix what's wrong with the Canucks. He's just going to get them playing this stingy defensive hockey, this system, blah 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 blah. And lo and
Yeah,
behold, like they had their best season in years and
well,
were
actually,
unbelievable.
I want
And
to add on
now
to
they've
this.
lost so many players in their teams, but they're still good because Tocchet has kept a consistent
exactly.
brand and
Yeah,
some transition
And
so
think
that
about
when new
this
players get into
season.
the lineup, they kind of get brought into the culture and team. And it's like you have these guys that the team plays a consistent way. You can swap players in and out. That's what the best teams do. Injuries are a part of the
Well, this
game,
is why
and the teams that
historically,
are the
as
best recover the best.
Well, we've seen Vancouver has had players who like even are underperforming this season, yet they're still in a
Mhm,
playoff spot.
for
And
sure.
also you look at like one of the teams we've mentioned so much over the past few years for having this identity is the Boston Bruins, who, although
Who, as of late, this identity has sort of, I don't know. Do you guys get the feeling that some might be wrong in
well, I think
Boston?
something's wrong